Look at the screen. $100,006.21. It's the number Marcus swore would set him free. But right now, sitting in his own kitchen, staring at that balance, he has never felt less free in his life. 6 figures in the bank, and he still can't make himself spend $1,800 to fix his own car. That's the trap nobody warns you about. The exact number that's supposed to buy freedom can build its own quiet cage. To understand how he got here, go back to the bus stop. Wet concrete, a leaking overhang, Marcus shivering under a jacket with a broken zipper, the air thick with diesel fumes. For 60 months he'd lived by a strict, unyielding code. The guy with lukewarm leftovers at office lunches. The friend who always had an excuse to skip the weekend trip. The tenant who kept his thermostat at 62 degrees and wore 2 sweaters to save $40 on gas. The night he crossed 6 figures, he allowed himself one small celebration. A single craft beer instead of the usual discount brand. He took a sip. It tasted exactly like the cheap stuff. The wallpaper was still peeling, the radiator still hissed. His balance had changed. Nothing inside him had. He was rich on paper, and his nervous system didn't believe a word of it. The trouble started 3 weeks later, when Marcus's engine began making a high, metallic grinding sound. The mechanic's verdict: a blown head gasket, $1,800 to fix. Marcus had the cash sitting right there, but paying it would drop his balance to $98,200, below the line in his head that separated safe from not safe. So he didn't pay it. He told the mechanic he'd think about it, then drove the wounded car home with the engine screaming the whole way. This was his boundary terror, the invisible floor he could not let himself fall below, even by $1. And boundary terror doesn't just cost money, it costs safety. Marcus started walking 3 miles to work in freezing rain rather than put more miles on a car he knew wasn't right. He kept driving it anyway when he had no choice, ignoring the noise, because fixing it meant watching that number drop. He wasn't protecting himself anymore. He was protecting a figure on a screen, and quietly putting his own body on the line to do it. It bled into everything. At a college friend's dinner, someone teased him. "Come on, Marcus. You're a 100K guy now. You can buy a plate of pasta." He went. But at the table, the warmth around him faded into background noise, while his eyes tracked the menu. $28 for an entree, $7 for sparkling water, each price converting itself into hours he'd already given up to earn this money. When the bill came, he calculated his exact share down to the penny. The table went quiet. Nobody said anything. They just looked at him, not with judgment, but with a kind of pity that was somehow worse. Around the same time, an old colleague offered him a seat at an early-stage startup. Real equity, real upside, the kind of opportunity that only knocks once. Marcus said no, not because the idea was bad, but because it didn't come with a guaranteed paycheck, and a guaranteed paycheck was the only thing keeping his number from moving. He chose the safety of a job he hated over a future he wanted, and told himself it was the responsible choice. Meanwhile, the money itself was quietly dying. Too afraid the market would crash the second he touched it, Marcus left the entire $100,000 sitting in a checking account, earning next to nothing. On screen, the number stayed exactly the same. 100,000, unmoved, untouched, safe. But underneath it, inflation was working in silence, dissolving its real value a little more every month, the way heat dissolves ice long before you notice the puddle. He was walking through snow to save $2 on bus fare, while thousands of dollars of real value simply evaporated behind a number that never moved. The very habits that built his ladder were now the ones pulling him under it. It finally broke him on a Tuesday night, alone, when the car wouldn't start at all, stranded in a parking lot, $100,000 in the bank, and no way to get home. Sitting there in the cold, Marcus understood, for the first time, that the number had never made him safe. It had just given him a new way to be afraid. That was the state Marcus was in when he met Sarah, an asset allocator a friend had introduced him to. She didn't lecture him about diversification or tax strategy. She listened to the car story, the dinner story, the walking in the rain story, and said simply, You're not protecting your money. You're guarding it like it's the last of something. She used one plain image to explain what was actually happening: pushing a heavy crate. In the beginning, getting it moving takes everything you have. Every dollar saved is raw, exhausting effort. But once it's moving, it doesn't need the same violent push anymore. If you keep shoving it with the same panic you used to start it, you don't make it go faster. You just wear yourself out, holding on to something that's already in motion. Sarah helped him build one concrete thing: a volatility buffer, a separate account, a few $1,000s set apart from his core $100,000, whose only job was to absorb life's shocks. The blown gasket, the dinner bill, the next surprise. As long as those hits landed there instead of on his main number, his mind could finally exhale. Marcus went home and rebuilt his financial pipes. Every payday, a portion moved automatically into a low-cost index fund, and a fixed amount slid straight into the volatility buffer, before he ever had to look at it or feel the loss of it. The first time the transfer ran, his hand actually hovered over the screen to cancel it. Every instinct in him said, "Stop this, keep it where you can see it." He sat there for a long moment, then closed the laptop instead and let it run. Nothing collapsed. The number he'd spent 5 years protecting stayed intact, and the extra money, left alone, began compounding quietly in the background, not guaranteed, not dramatic, just slowly building the way steady saving tends to, over years instead of days. With one less thing to defend every hour, Marcus had room again. He spoke up in meetings he used to sit through in silence, pushed for a project he actually cared about, and within 6 months earned a promotion that brought in more in a single month than a year of penny pinching ever had. The greatest secret of that first $100,000 is that it was never a finish line. It's a mirror. It shows you exactly who you are once survival stops being the excuse. Held with fear, it just builds a nicer cage. Let go of the handbrake, and it becomes the floor you build the rest of your life on. Today, Marcus still rides the bus sometimes, not because he has to, but because he likes the window seat and doesn't count the fare anymore. If any part of Marcus's story felt a little too familiar, if you've ever hit a number you worked years for and still felt like it wasn't enough, you're not alone, and it's not a character flaw. It's just a mind that hasn't caught up to the life it built. Tell me in the comments, what number are you chasing, and what do you think it'll actually feel like when you get there? This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. Outcomes vary based on your situation.